Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming and spending your lunchtime with Maryland Capital Enterprises. My name is Nick Rudolph, and I will be doing a presentation today on cash flow projections and how to access capital if you're a small business. We've got a really small group today, so if you have any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask as we're going through the presentation, especially as we're going through the cash flows, as I'll have a spreadsheet up and be typing a lot of numbers into them, probably pretty quickly. But let's go ahead and get started. So first, a little bit about who we are as MCE. So Maryland Capital Enterprises is what's known as a Community Development Financial Institution, or known as a CDFI. And what that means is that we were created to help get access to capital for small business owners who may have difficulty getting access to capital for various reasons. We started in 1998 by doing very small loans, $500 loans on the Eastern Shore. We continued to grow, became an SBA lender. We'll talk a little bit about what that means in a moment. And then in 2012, we hopped over the bridge to the Baltimore region. As of 2020, we are an SBA designated women's business center, which allows us to offer some enhanced services to women and minority owned businesses. So for more information about both of those, check out marylandcapital.org and the Women's Business Center at marylandcapitalenterprises.org. So, a little bit about us, a little more. So, we are a lender. A lot of folks come to us for, but we do also offer all those free services. As an SBA lender, we're able to offer funds that are backed by the federal government, so we have a little bit easier underwriting terms, but we also get funds from other federal and state sources, as well as private banks and foundations. Now, as far as the free counseling and training we provide, we call that technical assistance. That's available to anybody in our service area for free, whether or not you are borrowing with us. Includes the one-on-one counseling, webinars just like this, occasional classroom sessions and events, and then there's also a Women's Business Center conference in Salisbury each March. But now we're going to get into the cash flows and what you need to start a business, especially if you are looking for capital. So there's a real reason I put a blueprint here. You want to be thinking about your business as a building. And when you go downtown in Baltimore or other big cities, you'll see these big vacant empty lots with a fence around them and a picture of what the building is going to look like. And for maybe 12, 18 months, it's there and it looks like nothing is going on. But really what's going on is environmental studies, getting all the permits together, making sure that the blueprints are good to go. They're building the foundation for that building. Once it starts, it pops up pretty quickly and gets full pretty quickly. So you want to think about your business in the same way. The more time and effort you invest in that foundation, the easier the rest of it's going to be. So, I know we're talking about cash flows, but it is important that cash flows are part of your business plan and the business plan to get a loan. I'll tell you sort of secrets and hints to put in there. So first, who needs a business plan? The answer is every single business owner. And there's a couple of reasons for it. It's for getting funding, and it's also for being able to make sure that you know that you're on the right track as you're starting and growing your business. It is the blueprint for your business. So you really want to make sure it clearly describes what you do, who your customer is, who your industry is, and what steps you should be taking. Now, you do want to consider your audience for the plan. Think of it like a resume. So, if you're going for a grant, you might want to highlight all the good work you do in the community. Grants are rare, though. And if you're going for a loan, all that great work you're doing in the community is wonderful, but banks are really looking to find out if you're able to pay back the loan. So you'd be putting things emphasized a little differently depending on who your audience is. So let's talk about what we're looking for when us or bankers are making a decision on a loan. So it's good to know I am not a decision maker. I work with the loan committee who makes the decisions in our nonprofit. So I'll give you a little bit of an idea of what they're looking for. So the first thing is passion. So we want to know what drew you to the business and what's going to make you continue to have that passion. So there's lots of different reasons. It could be just a skill that you picked up that you really like. It could be that you want to open an assisted living facility because you saw how some of your elder relatives were treated in their facilities years and years ago. So what is it that brought you to this field? Then we want to talk about your expertise. So have you been doing this for a while and you're ready to branch out on your own? Are you just out of school and you're ready to open up that consulting group, that law firm? Or is it something that you're new on, but you've got a mentor to help? So think about things like that. Then we want to make sure that you've done your research. We want to know that you understand your place in the market and if there's room for you in the market, who your target customers are. We don't like seeing things that say our target customer is everybody. Sure, most businesses can serve everybody, but who are the folks that are going to be bringing in the majority of your money? You really want to drill down on that. And then also an ask. So many people forget to put that in their business plan. So, you really want, and we'll be going into the executive summary here, to start off your business plan with an opening statement that lets the folks know who you are, where you are, and what you're looking for. So as we do our cash flows today, it will be for a business, I'm sorry, called Nick's Dill Pickles. It is not a real business. None of the numbers we'll be talking about are real because I don't know the industry. But this business plan would say something like Nick's Dill Pickles LLC out of Baltimore, Maryland, and owned by Nick Rudolph, is a wholesale pickling company that is looking for a $15,000 loan to start up by purchasing equipment and our first sets of jars and labels. So, in that first few sentences, the reader is going to know exactly who you are and what you're looking for, and they'll frame that read through that lens. Also, in that sentence, in that section, you're going to want to have your story. This is where you want to be flowery. You want to talk about your passion, what drew you to this. You also want to talk about what your business does and what your special sauce is. Why are folks going to come to you as opposed to somebody else? Is it service? Is it price? Are you offering something that other folks aren't offering? Just a few sentences, very basic. And then at the end of that, you're going to want to have a detailed ask. So specifically, what are you purchasing with these funds and why do you need those? The next part is going to be your longest part. It's the marketing plan. And it is so much more than just how are you going to advertise your business. So the first thing you're going to want to do is your market research. Use Google, find out what industry publications are saying about the projections for growth in the next few years. And if it's a positive, you want to quote those and put that right in your plan. You want to talk about your target market, who your primary customer is. As I said, it can't be everyone. So if you're opening up a salon that could cut anybody's hair, you want to think about who you're trying to attract to make the most money. So it might be something like, I'm looking for African American women between 35 and 55 who make between $100 and $250,000 a year. So they've got that disposable income for some more high-end services. That's the kind of thing you want to think about. You then want to add your competition. List three of them. Say what they do well, and then say how you're going to compete in that market with them. Talk about that special sauce. And you want to think about local, regional, national, international competitors. We had somebody opening up a comic book store. They were able to show us two local comic book stores and then Amazon.com, showing us that they understood exactly, how big their competition was. You want to talk about your pricing. Are you high end, middle of the road, or a value? And then you want to talk about your advertising. And it can't just say social media campaign. We're going to want to see some detail in that. The next section is your operations or organization plan. So this is where you talk about your legal structure. Are you home-based? Do you have a store? Are your customers online? What hours are you open or are you available to talk to your customers? Will you have employees? If you will, how will management be structured? How will you hire them? Will they be W-9 or will they be contractors? And then you want to talk about your insurance. Is your business one that can just have a general liability, or are you dealing with food or kids or transportation where you might need additional insurances? Then you want to talk about your growth. Do you plan to expand? Is this going to become a franchise? Or do you want to open up one or two of those? Or is this just something that you're passionate about and you want to open up one business? Is there an exit plan? Do you plan to sell the business? A lot of folks are serial entrepreneurs. They build a business, they sell it, and they build another one. Really important, your contingency plan. What happens if you are unable to work for 3 to 6 months? How will your business continue to grow? Is it going to be a relative or do you have employees that can do it? You want to be thinking about things like that. And we're getting close to taking out the COVID-19 point, but if somebody tests positive, either customer or employee, what are you going to be doing about that? How will you let folks know? And the next section is your financial plan, which is going to lead us into the cash flows. So, the first thing about that financial plan is if you're a startup, you want to talk about your startup costs, right? So, what equipment are you going to need? Are you going to need to do a build out? Or do you want to have some sort of buffer of cash as you start? If you're existing, we're going to want to know, your last few years of profits and loss. We're going to want to know, see your taxes. We want to know how your business has been doing. We also want to know if you currently have any debts for your business. Let us know here. The worst thing that could possibly happen is that we pull your credit and find out that you have a loan that you didn't let us know about. You also want to talk about your break even. How many clients, how many sales do you need to do a month to pay your bills? The projections are what we're going to do next. So we'll talk about that in great detail. And then talk about your credit, especially if you have poor credit or you have some issues on your credit. Being upfront and open about those things will allow us to do things that might possibly mitigate those. However, if you tell us you've got a 700 credit score and you pull your credit and it's a 550 with a lot of missed payments, then that speaks to character where you said one thing and something else happened, and we'll determine whether it was just something you didn't know about or something that was being hidden. So the more upfront you can be with us, the better. The thing that we despise the most is surprises. So we're going to go on to the cash flow projections, which is really the meat of this. But before I do, I want to see if there are any questions about the business plan. And for folks who just joined during the beginning, feel free to unmute yourself at any time and ask a question. All right, any questions? Alrighty, so we will go on to the cash flows. What are cash flows and why do we need them? Well, the cash flows are going to show you the money going in and the money going out. So it's going to show you if you're making a profit, right? If you're bringing in $5 million a week, but it's costing you $5,500,000 a week to do that, then you don't have a positive cash flow. So you really want to see the difference between, the gross and the net there. The cash flow is a living document. So these are projections. These are just, ideas of what you think you're going to be doing based on what you think about the market. So this is going to change over the life of the business, and it will probably be not accurate. It'll be close, but not 100% accurate. It's really important when you're doing these that you be realistic and not too bullish. We had somebody who made handmade wedding invitations. They cost about $1,000 a wedding, and the projections said that because there are 10,000 weddings a year in Maryland, I'm going to make $10 million. Well, this is a one-person shop. There's no way they could do 10,000 weddings worth of handmade. A lot of people don't get invitations at all. They elope, they do the courthouse wedding. Some folks don't have enough money to spend $1,000. So he said, show us that you can do this on, maybe two or three a week. And if you're doing better than that, then that's just gravy. That's just more money than you're making. You want to make sure that you break down your income stream as much as possible, as well as your expenses. So if you're opening up a restaurant, you might want to think about dine-in, carry-out, or catering, or possibly, food, alcohol, merchandise. So if you think that you're going to be 70% food and 30% alcohol, and then after 6 months you notice that you're more of a 60-40, you can make a decision as a business owner. Is it that your drink program is so strong that it's bringing people in and you want to invest in that? Or is it you need to do some more improvement on your food? So this is going to help you make that decision with real numbers. Then you want to think about, do your sales change month to month? So if you're a landscaper, you might be less busy in January than you are in April. You want to think about things like that. And then it's important that you're paying yourself. If you don't have another job that's covering your expenses, how are you going to have a home? How are you going to have food and clothing and a little bit of money for some quality of life fun stuff? So we want to make sure that you're able to do that as well. So why do we need these things? Well, first of all, they're going to be required for most loans. It's a great planning tool. It helps you figure out what you need to start your business. It shows you that difference between, gross income and profit. It's just good governance. You just want to keep on your finances at all times. And it also shows you when and how much money you can take out of the business for yourself. So we're going to be doing again a fake business cash flow in just a few moments. But when you get started, you're going to need a template. Again, if you just email me, and I'll have my email on the last slide, we'll send you the template that we complete today and a blank version. You need to know how much money you have in the bank for the business, even if that number is zero, because that's going to be the start of your cash flows. I will say the majority of our startups do have $0 in the bank for their business. So it's not a huge issue if that's where you're at. You're going to want to know all your income and all your expenses as detailed as possible. However, sometime you're going to have to make estimates, and that is okay. So you want to have already talked to an insurance agent. You want to know what your rent is going to be. You want to have an idea of what you're paying your employees, and you're going to want to have an idea of what your inventory cost is. Another thing that folks always forget to put on their cash flows is the loan as income and the loan payments as expenses. That is part of your cash flow, and you want to make sure that if you're going for a loan, that those are on your cash flows. So now I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for just a moment and bring up the blank template, and we can get started. As I'm doing that, feel free to ask any questions. Alrighty, folks. If you can't see a spreadsheet on your screen, please let me know. Alrighty. So as I said, none of these numbers are real for a real business. I do not know this industry, but we're just going to use this as an example for how the numbers work on this. I do sometimes go through these pretty quick, so if you need me to slow down, please tell me. So this is your cash flow worksheet. As you see, it's for Nick's Dills. That's the company that's making dill pickles. Um, so the fiscal year started in 2025, so we're going to fix that. And as you see, we've got 12 months here. On your cash flows, you really aren't thinking about this being July through June. It's more month 1 through month 12. And that way, whenever your business starts, you can just shift the numbers that way. So you're going to have your cash on hand in the bank. We're going to say I hit a scratch off and have $1,000.
Could I
Then you're
interrupt
going
with
to,
a question?
sure.
Do you know in the spreadsheet, is there a way to change the names of the month? Like you're
Oh,
saying, making that
absolutely.
month to 10, 1 to 10?
Oh, absolutely. So the way in the spreadsheet is it's a numerical one. So let's say that you wanted to say you were getting the loan in September. You just change that 7 to a 9, and then it just changes everything for you on the spreadsheet.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
No worries, no worries. So then we've got the income. As you see, we've got a bunch of income lines. You can always, insert a line to add more if you have more streams. And then we always have this reminder here of the loan. Then we're going to start talking about your expenses. So the first thing on here is your inventory. If you're selling something, how much is it costing you? Then we've got your wages, how much are you paying folks? And your payroll expenses, which we estimate at 10%, but if you have a real number, of course, put that in. We've got your supplies. So that's your real office supplies, paper, printers, pens, ink, things like that. Any subscriptions or dues you may have, a storage facility if you need it, advertising, how are you going to get the stuff out there, your accounting, your legal, your rent, your telephone, utilities, insurance, your state taxes, and then any professional licensing fees. So those are sort of your variable expenses. Your more sort of set expenses are in this section. So you've got your loan payment, any other debts you may have, what your startup costs are going to be, anything you put in reserve in case something breaks, and then of course, how much money you're able to take out of the business for yourself. This business is going to be a part-time business where Nick keeps his full-time job. So this is not going to be attempting to, become a full income. It's to supplement income. So as I'm selling my pickles, I'm selling them in 3 different places. One is at a farmer's market. One is wholesale, so that's going to restaurants, and then one is online. I'll have a little website that I can sell and ship. This is going to be mostly families and friends at the beginning, and then 2 blank income lines again. So I plan on only selling at weekend farmers markets, and trying to add 1 restaurant a month. So let's say that we're starting in September. Well, in Baltimore City, we've got the 33rd Street Farmers Market year round. And then we've got the 83 that goes from May through Christmas. So in September, both farmers markets are going to be opened. The Waverly one is the 33rd one is much smaller. So, I figure I might make $300 at Waverly and $900 at 80, and $600 at 83 for a total of $900 a week. Then we're just going to multiply that by four. And then that gives us, I'm so bad at math, $3,600. Then we are going to do wholesale. So month one, I'm just getting started. I haven't talked to a restaurant. No restaurant owners have come by yet. So we're just going to have that go down. Online, I'm going to have $500 in sales that month because this is my family and my friends who are trying to help support my business. Then the next month, October, people have heard about us, but we're not really getting that much bigger. So maybe we'll go up to 4,000 a month there. I've met my first restaurant, and I honestly think there's not going to be much of a change in the online through the life of the business. So then November, it's getting a little colder, but think people are thinking about gifts for the holidays. So that might just bump up a little bit to 4,200. We'll just continue on this line. I think 4,500 is safe in December. And then January, we're down to one farmer's market and people are not spending money. So, I'm thinking maybe $1,000 that month. It picks up a little bit in February. Then in March, we're going to see probably a pretty significant jump because the weather starts to get nicer. Then we're going to see a huge jump in April. And then in May, that's when the second farmers market is opening again. People are going to be excited for us. They're going to be, excited that we're going to come there. So we'll probably do 6,000 in the first month. And then I think we can just add 500 a month during the busy season. I want to add one restaurant a month. So I'm just going to keep adding $250 here. And then, as I said, I'm just going to keep $500 a month on average for my sales online. So as you can see here, my projected gross income for the first year, not including the loan, is $74,050. Um, the loan, let's say, is $15,000. So that's going to bump that number up by 15. And then as you see, it does all the math for you. So the next is your inventory. So I, again, don't know this number, but we're just going to say that the inventory cost is a third of the sales. So the way we would do that is we see where our sales numbers are, and those are in 13 through 15, but it could eventually go through 17. So what you do is you change that to C13 and then the semicolon and bring that out to C17. Close the parentheses, and then we're going to multiply that by 0.333333 to get a third. You can then just copy and paste that across the rest of the line. Also good to know that I am happy to do one of these with you for your own business. It's absolutely free. You would just need to go onto our website, sign up under our client intake form where it says get started, and then we would reach out to you. As far as wages go, I think the first 2 months it's just going to be me, and then I might get some family to help. So let's just say $300 a month for the busy season. It's going to be just me for a while, but then in April, we're going to do $300 for the Waverly, and then in May, people are going to start coming. It's going to get busier, so I'm going to average $1,000 a month. Oops, I wish it was 100. $1,000 a month for my contractors who are going to be helping me do the sales. As you see, it automatically put the 10% there. Now I am home-based, so I am not going to have outside services, but I will need to, continue to buy things like paper. So let's say $50 a month for that. All right, subscriptions and dues, I don't need, there's not like a pickle magazine that I know of, so we're not going to do that. Storage, I don't need a storage space right now. Advertising. Well, I'm going to try to do a campaign to get started. So maybe 250 $250 a month. The first 2 months, bring it down 150 to 100. And then we'll just keep advertising, just doing social media for $100 a month. Distribution, all the online sales are going to pay their own shipping. There's going to be very minimal gas prices. So, I think maybe $50 a month there. Now, the next part is your accountant and your lawyer. Even if you don't have these, you want to make sure you've got a reserve for these. You need an accountant because there are every quarter payments that need to be made. There's all kinds of filing deadlines. If you miss those, you go out of good standing and then you're no longer eligible for our financial services or, any other CDFI or state program. So I would just average $50 a month for each, and then that way I've got money for when I need them. I am going to rent an evening spot at one of those ghost kitchens to make my pickles in. It's got some storage space. That's going to cost me $500 a month. I can basically cook from 7 p.m. until 7 a.m. Um, so we'll do that. My telephone, I'm just going to add a line to my personal line for the business. Utilities are included in the rent in this place. Now, my insurance, it's a pretty simple business, but there is food. So, I'm thinking I'm going to pay about $100 a month for that. My taxes and fees, I've got the Baltimore City Health Department plus the annual $300 from the state. So just to be safe, I'm going to average $600 there. And then there's no professional fees. So as you can see from that initial, what was that, 89,000, 50, 42,700, 42,473 is expenses so far. So then we got my loan payment. I like to assume these loans at 8% at $15,000. It would be over 3 years. And according to a calculator, that would be $470.05 every month. Alrighty. I don't have any other debts. This is a new business. It's a small business, but I've got to buy all my stuff to start everything off out. And between the equipment and the initial printing supplies, that's going to be $12,500, which leaves me with that $2,500 buffer from the loan. I am not needing to pay myself. I'm keeping a full-time job. So now we've got year one of the cash flows. And the really important cell is this highlighted one here. That is how much money your business has in the bank at the end of the year. So as you can see, I started with 1,000. I borrowed 15,000, so that's 16,000 to start. So, I have made a profit of about 14,000, close to $400 for the year. So now we're going to see what's going to happen in year two, but it looks like we've got a question in the chat. Oh, awesome. Yep, I will make sure to get you that. All righty. So we now have year one in the books. We've got $30,376 to start year two. So now let's see what year two is going to look like. So we're just going to copy all of year one, and then we're going to go to year two, go to the A1 cell and paste it. Now, as you'll see here, it's still got all the year one numbers in it. We're going to need to do a lot of change there. The first one is the cash on hand in the bank. That's $30,376. And as you see, these numbers start to pop up. So then we're going to look at how we're going to do, over the next period of time. So during the busy months through December, I'm going to keep the same farmers market, but I am going to keep adding new restaurants. Not if I wish. Um, and then I'm going to cap it at $5,000 just for the simplicity of this, not taking out a second loan. Now I go through my other expenses and I say, is this going to stay the same? And the answer is it's not. I've got more money So I'm going to have people come in on those off months too. So there's gonna be a little bit more expense there. Supplies aren't going up. Advertising, we're gonna just cut it to $100 a month total. All of this other stuff is gonna stay the same. Then we go into your more fixed expenses. We are gonna be paying in those 2 months. We're not buying a new set of equipment, but I think in the middle of the year, I want to put $5,000 in a reserve account because things start to break. So now, as you see, I started at 30,000. I've got 84,000. So I think I want to start paying myself a little bit. So 2,500 bucks a month is, I know, is a little bit more than just a little bit, but let's see what that does to our numbers. So if I'm paying myself 2,500 a month, so 30,000 for the year, I'm putting 5,000 in escrow. So that's money that's available if I need it. I will have then profited an additional almost $24,000 for the year. So what this is showing me is that this is a successful business with a positive cash flow as a part-time business. I would need to do some serious scaling if I wanted to make it a full-time business. So I'm going to take this down off the screen in just a few moments, but are there any questions before I take this down? Nope. Okay. So now we're going to bring back up the PowerPoint to finish the presentation. All righty. So before we go into like how the capital works, there's a few things I like to say about the end at the end of this for the cash flows. First, things that people forget to do. Taking that amount of money you have at the end of the year and putting it in that cash on hand in the first time. You don't want to have that be zero each year because you're not really showing all the profit you're making. You don't want to be taking out too much or too little of an owner's draw. If your business is making hundreds of thousands of dollars, you should be paying yourself. You want to make sure that you've got accountants, legal, and marketing. Those are investments more than they are expenses. Be weary of negative cash flows. If you are, losing money, after 6 or 8 months, you might need to really look at what your business is doing. Or when you're starting it up, if you see that your cash flows are going to be losing money, you might want to be thinking about other streams of income or ways to cut expenses. Again, keep that loan and loan payment in there and make sure that you set your realistic expectations. So now what do I do with those? So they're going to be part of your application for any type of loan, lines of credit, or a grant. It's something you can review to make sure you're meeting your goals or adjust the goals. It's good for growth planning, and it's something that you want to update, at least once a year to make sure that, you're keeping up with current prices and things like that. So now we're going to talk funding. Before we start that, any general questions about the cash flows? All righty. So when you apply for a loan at a CDFI, we're all looking for similar things, but this is going to be specific to Maryland Capital Enterprises. Again, the counties that we serve for lending are anything on the Eastern Shore, Baltimore City, Baltimore County, Anne Arundel County, Harford County, and Cecil County. So the first things you're going to have are some forms. The first thing is the intake form. Ours is online, other folks it might not be. That will put you in the system. It'll get you a counselor who help walk you through all these steps. Next is your business loan application. It's the same application for new or existing businesses. This is where you're making your ask, you're answering a few yes or no questions, briefly discussing what your business does and discussing the ownership structure. Then there's the third, which is the personal information supplement. All of our loans are personally guaranteed by the business owner. Anybody who owns 20% or more of that loan is going to have to be a guarantor on that loan. So each one of those folks is going to need to fill out a personal information supplement. If you have a business with a large ownership team, we're going to want to see 3 or 4 folks personally guaranteeing that loan. Then we're going to need supporting documents, and really these are the most important ones. The first is a thorough business plan. As a client, we're more than happy to review yours and give you hints. If you haven't started one, we've got a great template that can get you started, and then as you're writing it, we can help review each section. We're going to need 24 months of cash flow projections. If you want to do more, more is always welcome. You can use our template or any template that works for you. We're going to want to see that you've been turned down for a loan previously. That can either mean you've gone through the whole process or you've had a discussion with your banker, your business banker, and they say, we don't do startups. We don't do loans that small. We don't think we're ready to fund your type of business yet. Any type of notation of that conversation is good enough. If you've been around, we're going to want to see your last 2 years of profit and loss statements, assuming you've been around that long, your most recent quarterly balance sheet, and your last 2 years of business tax returns. For every business, we're going to want to see the last 2 years of any of the owner's tax returns. We're also going to want to see 3 months of business bank statements. And if you're a startup and you haven't been around that long, we want to see that you've got that business bank account. And then 3 months of personal bank statements for all the guarantors. That is what's required. Everything else here is going to be optional. So the first is reference letters. Those are often very helpful, especially if you're in a situation, let's say you're renting a booth at a salon and you're ready to open up your own, and you come to us with a stack of 50 letters from clients saying, hey, when she moves over to her own spot, I'm going to move over with her. It's going to make my job of convincing folks that this business is going to hit the ground running a lot easier. It can also be, professional references, educational references, clergy, anything that's going to help shine a brighter light on you. Then anything else you think can help tell your story. So this can be things like your leases, your LOI, estimates or quotes for things that you're going to buy or jobs you're going to have done, invoices, contracts, licenses, your resume, any marketing you've done, links to your website or your social media, awards you may have won, anything like that that's going to help tell your story, and help get you closer to a yes. So what are we looking for when we're looking at your application? Number one, you've got to have to have been turned down. We're going to want to see a thorough, clear business plan. We're going to want to know your experience in the field or who your mentor is, the strength and realisticness of your cash flow. We do require collateral for these loans. So, does it cover the full amount of the loan? Is it a strong piece of collateral like a fully owned house or automobile? Or is it something else which we can get very flexible with? Then we're going to want to see reasonable credit. As you will see here, there is not a credit score listed. We don't have a technical minimum credit score, but we're really looking at what you've been doing over the last year or two. Looking for things like missed payments, past due amounts, things like that. There are two disqualifiers, however. One is if you've had a bankruptcy discharge in the last 24 months, and the next is if you have a tax debt without a payment plan. If you are working on getting a payment plan, we can go all the way through the process with you. We just couldn't close the loan until you had that. We also want to know the economic conditions for the venture. What does that mean? That means, is it the right time to open this business? Or are you opening up a pizza shop on a block with 6 other pizza shops? If you are, you're going to really need to convince me that you're going to be able to do well. And then, of course, are you able to repay the loan? If the business is not successful, can you get back into the workforce and repay the loan? Because these are personally guaranteed, so you are still going to owe those funds. So now we're going to talk about specifically the loans that we have at Maryland Capital Enterprises. The first are our small business loans. If you have been around for 2 full tax years or less, you are considered a new business and you're eligible for up to $35,000. If you've been around longer than that, you're an expanding business, and that's up to $150,000 that you can apply for. The terms are going to be 1 to 10 years, depending on the size of the loan. A $50,000 loan might be 6 years. Anything over 100 would definitely be 10 years. Our interest rates are currently set at 6 to 12%. A lot of our loans are going out at 8%, but there's sometimes small fluctuation there. Again, we do require collateral. If you are using a home or real estate as collateral, we will need an appraisal that's 12 months old or less, but don't get that appraisal until you've been approved because you don't want to be spending that money. We also have a list of some appraisers that you can work with. Okay, so again, anybody who owns 20% or more needs to guarantee the loan. The application fee is $100 plus $25 per owner for the credit report. This is important. We only check TransUnion and we do a soft pull, so it will not impact your score. There are closing fees. Generally, a $50,000 loan is walking out the door with just north of $48,000. When we do your payments, we do automatic payments from your business checking account. So if you change your bank, make sure to let us know. There's no penalty for prepayment. If your loan is 30 days old or more, you can just pay off exactly what you owe on the principal without any additional, interest or penalties or anything like that. We will visit your business either in person or virtually twice a year, look at your books, see how everything's going, and I'll let you know about resources that we have. Now, the big question is my business eligible and what can I do with those funds? So, we can help just about any business in our service area, unless they are in what's considered sort of what they used to call the sin industry, adult bookstores, 100% alcohol, things like that. We are able to work in the cannabis, both medical and recreational, as long as you're in our service area. Um, so, what can you use the funds for? Well, one other thing you can't do actually is if you are a real estate business that does investments, you can't purchase or rehab properties that your office is not going to be in 51% of or more with our funds. But if you need to build out your office, if you need to buy a truck or reusable mechanical equipment, those are things that we can definitely fund if you're a real estate investment company. So what can you use the funds on? Any business related expense, build out, rent, salaries, equipment, inventory, all of that kind of stuff. The only thing is that if you're a home-based business, we cannot pay your rent, mortgage, or any of your utilities. So the next loan is our credit builder loan. This is for folks with no or maybe poor credit, folks who are thinking about tipping their toes into entrepreneurship, or folks who have an existing business that need a quicker turnaround on a small amount of money because something broke, a tree root grew through a pipe, something like that. These terms are going to be up to 2 years for up to $5,000. Generally, you want to be on the higher side of this loan because with all the fees and everything, a lower amount of money might just not be worth it. The interest rate is 9% for all of these loans. We do not require collateral, but of course, we are happy to take it and would definitely strengthen your application. Everything else is the same except for the fees. This is a $50 application fee plus the credit report fee, and then closing is $75. Um, are there any questions about the loans while I've got these up on the screen? Yep, all righty. So now we're going to be doing the close up here. The first thing is there is nowhere in the country where there are more free resources for small businesses than the Maryland region. So take advantage of all of us. Talk to your library. Talk to the Small Business Development Center, SBDC, run by the SBA. You talk to your local universities, your Chamber of Commerce, the Maryland Department of Commerce. Ask us all the same questions. We all have different experiences. We'll give you slightly different answers, and then see who you feel most comfortable with and work with them. You can always jump around. You can always ask people the same questions. We're all a team. We are not competitors. We are collaborators. If I think your loan isn't great for us, but it's great for something like Baltimore Community Lending, I will make the warm introduction. We really are, our win is your win. So, take advantage of all of us. The last thing that's part of the presentation is the 5 things to remember when applying for capital. The first is keep your job until your business can pay for you fully. You want to keep a job. Again, you need that accountant. Even if you are an accountant, they're going to get you out of the weeds. They're going to make sure that you're eligible for all of these services. Like I said in the last slide, ask for help. There's so many resources for you. Take advantage of those. Then you want to make sure you're putting your money in the bank and keeping it in the bank. When you're looking for a loan for a business, this is not the time to buy a car or a house or open up credit cards. And then don't be an island. People go to small businesses because they're part of the community and they feel good for supporting parts of the community. So give back, join your chamber, join your Rotary, give to local charities. You just need to be careful when you're giving because you want to make sure that you're not a political business unless you are a political business. So, things like kids, military, animals, food banks like that are generally safe. It's the reason why when you walk into a bar, they've got sports on instead of news. Because if they had Fox News on or MSNBC on, you're automatically, turning off half of the people that are going to walk in your door. So you really want to make sure to be a part of the community for the whole community. So we've got a couple of great webinars coming up. Tomorrow we've got a LinkedIn for advanced users. The next day I'll be teaching the first steps on starting your own business. And then on the day before the 4th of July, we're going to have the SBA in for a Q&A session. Those are always a lot of fun, really informative. I often join those as a participant, not as a presenter. And with that, that is the end of my presentation. As you see here, my email address is nrudolph@marylandcapital.org. If you need any of the documents, the slides, the business plan template, the cash flow template, any of that stuff, just feel free to email me there. Again, nrudolph@marylandcapital.org. You will be getting an email from us, after this presentation. You can feel free to reply to that as well. Now I just need to copy one thing.
Nick, I do have a
Well,
question.
sure, sure.
Do you have a template for profit and loss statements and quarterly balance sheets if we don't have an accountant yet?
So I don't have a template, and that's often different from for each business the way it would
Sure.
look, but I'm happy to, schedule a one-on-one and then we can
Okay. All
figure out what would work best for you. Absolutely.
right, thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions? Remember, guys, I've got access to money. Nope. Okay. Well, I always come up with my best questions when these things end anyway. Feel free to contact me with any questions that you may have. I just thank you for spending your lunch with me. I look forward to seeing you in other presentations or working with you one-on-one. We also have an office in Salisbury. So if you're on the Eastern Shore, we've got folks who understand the economy of the Eastern Shore as well. Again, thank you all for coming. Watch the video again on YouTube, and we'll see you very soon. Have a great day.